Another Drive at 5 on IntellectualRadio.com/iHeartRadio station. I'm your host, Roman. Today's show is sponsored by Joshua Flynn and Associates Insurance. Please get your insurance today. Today, my guest is the state representative of the 8th District, as well as a real estate broker entrepreneur, and now a presumptive mayoral candidate of Chicago. Please give a Drive at 5. Welcome back to the Drive to LaShawn K. Ford. Welcome back to the Drive, sir.
I'm very happy to be back with you, Roman. Thank you for having me.
The last time you were here on the Drive, I asked this question of whether or not you will be running for mayor. You said you were considering it and everything is open for an option. So my question is, why now and why this late in the year you are running for mayor?
I think that what's important is, the grassroots movement that has taken place has pulled me in this race. I had no intentions on running for mayor. It happened because this movement made it happen.
Period.
That's what happened. And I feel super ready to take on the challenge. And I feel that my work in Springfield and the issues that I have worked on represents the city of Chicago, the people that live in it.
What is your platform as mayor of Chicago?
Well, it's pretty simple. What we want on a Ford campaign and for a Ford administration is for the people to have a seat at the table. For too long, this process has not been open to everyone. So, one, we want the people of Chicago to be empowered so that this city is powered by people. Two, we want the city to be financially stable. Three, we want the city to be as healthy as possible. And four, we need the city to be safe.
So can you define healthy as possible and safe for me? Can you elaborate on that?
Thank you for asking. So when you have what President Obama did, he ran for 8 years, and his strongest accomplishment, and an accomplishment that no president has ever been able to accomplish, is to get health care for everyone in this country. Well, in Illinois, I was a part of making sure that Illinois accepted Obamacare, or the Affordable Care Act, to allow Medicaid to be expanded to people in Illinois that could not afford health insurance. So not only did I work to bring the Affordable Care Act to Illinois, I also worked on the bill and negotiations to make Cook County the early enrollee, to allow individuals to enroll early to Obamacare. So what we want for the city is to make sure that everyone that needs health care will be enrolled. We want Chicago to have the highest insured population in the nation. Obama is from Chicago. It's his signature legacy. And so when we have a healthy Chicago, people with medical homes, we believe that it makes our community safer. We believe that people will be able to receive treatment for substance use, and they will not be going to fill our prisons and our jails, because they will be able to receive treatment for substance use. They will also be able to receive treatment for mental health issues. Healthcare is very important to prevent substance use disorders, homelessness, and making sure that people have a healthy lifestyle. So if we do that, I believe that our communities will become safer without a doubt. And so the other areas, when we talk about the safety, well, the key for our communities to be safer also is to make sure that we deal with the root causes of the problem. So the root causes of the problem is the ongoing, unfairness that this city has been, governed by. And so we believe that if we deal with the systematic problems that this city has been facing, that's been keeping only a few in and so many out, we believe that the city will be safer because people will be able to find jobs. We will expand the opportunities to people in every community to receive contracts with the city. The city has so many opportunities the city has CDOT, that's the transportation. They have many opportunities for people to receive contracts. They have the Chicago Housing Authority. They have the Board of Education. All these areas, if we open it up and allow small businesses to prosper, allow small businesses to start up, they will create jobs and they will put people to work in the city. And that's going to ultimately make our streets safer. Automatically, we're going to build a trade school that's going to be for technology and manufacturing. We need a trade school in Chicago, and we will announce that on day one, that we will partner with Illinois with the capital bill that we're going to pass, and we're going to build a trade school in Chicago.
What separates you from the other candidates? A lot of people are running. What separates you from the other Black candidates that are running currently for mayor?
Well, I don't know as far as just separating me from the Black candidates. I think that what separates me from all of the candidates is the experience that I have with working with Springfield directly, where we deal with home rule and policies for Chicago. And I've been doing that for 12 years, where we send billions of dollars to Chicago for the parks, the schools, and public safety. So I've been working with city council for 12 years. No one has a proven record of standing up for the issues that I have stood up for. Now, people could say that they support certain things, but what we know is that when people have the proof in writing what they stand up for, that's what counts more than anything. So when you have someone that has voted for a woman's right to choose, I'm the only one that stood up for women with a right to choose that's considering this run. I'm the only one that protected the immigrants in this state with the sanctuary state, making sure that we have a humane treatment of individuals that's immigrants in this state. I'm the only one that stood up for the gay and lesbian community, LGBTQ community, by voting to give civil unions to the gay and lesbian community, and ultimately voting for the marriage equality law. I'm the only one in this race that has stood up for reentry. I'm the one that expanded ceiling for felonies. I'm the one that banned the box for applications in Illinois. Those are things that proves where my values are as it relates to the people of Chicago and what people can expect out of me.
Presumptive mayoral candidate Willie Wilson was on IntellectualRadio.com last week. The show was New Black Leadership, and he discussed many issues, but he also discussed so many Black candidates are throwing their hats in the race. He said they should step aside and allow him to run. What is your response to his comments about other Black candidates should step aside and allow him to run?
Well, I think that's a disrespect to democracy. It's a disrespect to the community. And I think that that type of statement is divisive. And I think that people have a right to decide what choice they want. It's not candidates that have money that throw their money around to say, I am the one and you are to choose me because I have the money. We know that that has caused many problems in our democracy when we look at President Trump and the late or the governor of Illinois, Ronner. And so, we know that when you buy a seat or you think that your money is the most important factor in an election, that's the wrong attitude. And no one should want to elect someone that thinks that their money is their most valuable asset.
Period.
Well, maybe not a period.
Go ahead.
I think that, when you think about democracy, if you were going to one vote, everyone has a vote, and they could spend their vote on a candidate. If you had the choice of taking a international flight, and the cost was going to be the same for a first class versus a coach, I think that you're going to take the first class. And so your choice is yours. So I think that what people will see, that their vote is the price that they will pay for the best candidate. And they're not going to waste their vote on anyone but who they feel is the best.
Now that's a period, right?
That's a period.
Okay. Some people think that you specifically are running for mayor may be a ploy to get your name out there for Congressman Danny K. Davis' position. What are your thoughts about those rumors that are circulating about you're trying to run for mayor to get your name out there for a possible run for Congressman Danny K. Davis, which was asked on this program whether or not he's going to retire. He said he's not, but rumors out there saying he will. So what are your thoughts about those circulating rumors that are out there?
There will always be rumors, and this election will prove to people how serious I am. It makes no sense to play games with individuals because my reputation means more to me than political games. The people of Chicago, where I live, I believe we are hurting in this city. And so I think that the fact that we have a grassroots movement that people have asked me to run should dispel any myth that Ford is doing it because he wants to get his name out there. It wasn't my idea, and I could tell you matter-of-factly that it was not my idea to run for mayor. I was convinced by people getting petitions, spending their time volunteering, going out, getting signatures, and constantly working to get the number of signatures necessary to be in this race. There will be there could be no evidence found that Ford was the one that said he should run. We have many people that can attest to the fact that I was asked to run. I had grassroots people from reentry asking me to run, people from childcare, people from the LGBTQ community, people from the education community, people from all over in the immigration community have asked me to run. So people have a right to believe what they want. And I think that it's my job as a candidate to hope that I could convince them of my sincerity in my run for mayor.
You mentioned your connection with the grassroots effort. Am I correct?
That's right.
Now, the grassroots effort that you have mentioned disagree with the President Donald Trump. You made an appeal a couple of months ago to President Trump to send FBI resources here to lower the crime and other resources here to Chicago. It fell on deaf ears. What made you to appeal to Donald Trump and go on Fox News and stuff that the grassroots are solely against, to you to
Well,
say, hey, you know, come to Chicago, and it still fell on deaf ears?
well, I don't think that there will be any proof that I asked for anything but resources to come to Chicago. First of all, Chicago, Illinois sends, for every dollar we send, we receive less than $1 back in our tax dollars. We in Illinois are shortchanged by our federal returns. Some states send $1 and receive almost $8 back to their state. We cannot afford to say we don't want to have relationships with the federal government and all of the agencies, with the housing crisis we have in Chicago, with the police crisis we have in Chicago. We need federal help so that we don't have to continue to raise taxes on our citizens. Federal dollars must come back. Second, there was a consent decree that President Obama's administration left the DOJ with. Trump said that he was not going to follow through. It's my belief that we needed the DOJ to follow through on the consent decree and force changes in the Chicago Police Department. But when we cut out a relationship with Washington, we only cut our nose off to spite our face. And when the current mayor decides to say it, it was only for one reason. It was because he wanted to make sure that he protect the illegal immigrants that's in this city. Now, we have no problem with doing that, but it makes no sense to say those words. There are almost 20,000 mayors in the country, and not one has said that their city is a Trump-free zone. It's not necessary.
But how did you convince? How can you convince the grassroots efforts that was solely against President Trump, his policies? You made those appeals, which you are mentioning, to say, you know what? Okay, I'm going to do X, Y, and Z so you guys can be with me.
No. I think that grassroots people that I've talked to understand that we need federal resources. Trump doesn't ever have to come here. We don't need more law enforcement coming in. What we need is to make sure that we don't shut off the resources that we are due. The city of Chicago right now have lawsuits with the federal government because of the statement that was made by the mayor. And so now the DOJ has cut off funds to Chicago, all because there were words that the mayor may have said that caused us to be cut off. And now we have to spend taxpayer dollars to fight for our tax dollars to come back to Chicago. Campaigns are about making sure that people learn what the candidate stands for. My record in Springfield and my philosophies clearly separates me from Republicans, but it also shows that I'm able to work across the aisle and work with Republicans to get things done. My reentry work was passed because I was able to get Republicans on board to support the reentry work that I've done when some Democrats didn't. We cannot allow for one person to dictate what we all think in Chicago. So the mayor said on late night show, Chicago is a Trump-free zone, and his words mean something.
Let's talk about some city matters that is plaguing our Chicago, starting with police abuse of power, which you've already mentioned. Police officer Jason Van Dyke, who shot and killed Laquan McDonald, has not been sentenced nor terminated from his position as a Chicago police officer. As mayor of Chicago, when there is a guilty verdict on a police officer, you think there should be an automatic termination from the department and a loss of their pension. What are your thoughts on that?
If a cop is guilty of shooting someone, should it be automatic termination?
Yes.
Of course.
And also a loss of their pension.
Yes, absolutely.
But right now, as we speak currently, the sentence was supposed to be October 31st. It has not happened. You're looking at the 12th. Still hasn't happened. And so far, Eddie Johnson and all the rest, and you have mayoral candidates that's there that stood by this and said that it's not going nowhere. Why they're not calling the mayor, aldermen, and stuff out to say you need to terminate him?
You know, that you're right, and I think that there's always going to be times where we can all get in front of the mic and call for terminations of people, and sometimes we have to be vigilant and see if this is happening. Now, the superintendent said that it's happening. I think that it is going to happen. I've had conversations with the superintendent.
But why, and I'm sorry to cut you off, why is it taking this long for it to happen? He's in jail. He's in shackles.
You're absolutely right. And I take note of your conversation. And you know what? That's what our administration would be about. One Chicago, powered by people, making sure that we are aware of and constantly aware of issues that we should be putting our full force behind. And you're absolutely right. This matter should be front and center, and taxpayers should not be paying for that pension, period.
Why on the state level has there not been any checks or balances on the fraternal order of police and the Chicago Police Department as a whole in killing young African American males? The reason for this question is the city has been paying and shelling out billions. It's not millions anymore. It's billions of dollars of settlements. Every single time there's a settlement of 3.5 million, 3.5 million, 3.5 million. And it seems like only thing a young black male is worth now is $3.5 million. What are your thoughts about providing a check and balances in Springfield? You're the state rep. Why is it not happening to say you're just a union? Get out of city matters, and you don't belong in the shootings and so forth and so on.
Well, first of all, they are the unions, and they are sort of like the teachers union that represent teachers. The police union represents the police. But here's what's very important that we have to recognize. And we have to make sure that we bring some type of understanding with the FOP that taxpayers actually pay their union dues. It's taxpayers that pay for police dues, because when they get their check, union dues are taken out. Now, somehow, some way, the FOP has to realize that their very existence is because of taxpayers of Chicago. And so until they are brought to the table and have an understanding that their very existence is because of taxpayers, I don't think we're going to have any change. So my goal is to make sure that we bring real serious conversations with the FOP, the Chicago Police Department, and the mayor's office and the state to make sure that we get a fair contract with the FOP that's going to protect not only the Chicago residents, but also make sure that we have a well-trained police force.
But don't you think that people are sick and tired of having a conversation? They want to see some type of action. They're not getting it on the local level. The state level is supposed to have saying, you're not doing it on your end, city. Let's do it on the state end. It should be a check and balance here.
Well, I mean, I think that it takes time to get everything that we want done. Now, you got to remember, I am a victim of police harassment, and my family and the people of Chicago. So if I could snap a finger and get this done, I would do it. But what we need is to make sure that this is a an issue that we could get the people of Chicago behind. And that's what we need in the next mayor of the city of Chicago, someone that's going to stand up and demand that we have the best contract, and that's going to be guiding that for the good of the city.
In a CBS 2 investigation, they detailed police raids and raiding the wrong house in the homes that people were staying in. They just raided. One incident that happened, I think, almost a year ago, led to a police officer putting a gun up to a 3-year-old's head during a raid in the wrong house. This is now becoming a common problem and costing the city and taxpayers millions of dollars because of settlement. As mayor, what will be your plan to curb this ongoing problem that is developing of police raiding the wrong house? And like I said before, the FOP, no biggie.
I think the key is to have a well-trained police force that respects the citizens of Chicago. That's the bottom line. If you are well trained, and then one, you're not gonna do that. It's not gonna happen as often as it happens. Things may happen, but this is happening far too often. And then when it happens, the people are treated unfairly. They're disrespected. And there's no reason for babies to be treated the way they have treated some of these kids when they make these, I would call bogus break-ins. So I think that what we have to do is find some type of peace and heal this city as it relates to police and the community, because we have to coexist.
And period, you just think?
Yes, we must coexist, and it would be. I mean, it is my priority to make sure that we do everything that we can to reduce the $1.6 billion in police in the police budget for the city of Chicago. And so we have to make sure that we have a well-trained police force that's respected, so we could reduce the budget of the police department and make our streets safer.
What is your stance about the new development of where the current mayor proposed on the west side of Chicago a state-of-the-art police academy that's costing close to billions of dollars?
There's 95 million.
95 million, close to $1 billion, like I said.
No, that's not close to $1 billion.
Well, if you do the math or something like that, I get what you're saying, but when you're looking at that, it's going to add up. And some homes are going to be taken away. Number one, as mayor, do you agree with that decision to having a state-of-the-art police academy?
The only way I agree to a new state-of-the-art police academy is to have a new state-of-the-art trade school for manufacturing training and for technology training. It makes no sense to have a trained police force or a new police training center when you're not taking care of the root cause of the problem that's forcing you to build a new high-tech police department. So we need to make sure that while we're looking at the police academy, that we're looking at the root cause of why we need more police. And the root cause is making sure that we put people, give people opportunities to be trained so that they can take part in the workforce. When we do that, then things are fair and just. But it makes no sense to have the attitude of policing. Our mindset in Chicago right now is to just say we're going to be a police city instead of saying we're going to do everything we can to reduce the need for policing, deal with the root cause that's causing us to be unsafe in Chicago, causing us to think that we have to spend more money on policing.
Do you think that the Chicago police are just too comfortable under their own skin? You think they're just too relaxed, too comfortable? You know, they make a mistake. Oh, the city's going to cover it. Do you think the police has gotten too comfortable under their skin and patrolling?
I can't say that all of the police are comfortable, because there are police that have a conscience that would like to be a good cop. But we have to have a city that makes it possible for good cops to tell about bad cops. You can't have a city that just tells community that you can't, what is it, code of silence? You can't have a code of silence when you have a code of silence in our police department. Our goal is to make sure that the police department has the ability to root out corruption, and our citizens to participate with police so that our streets are safer. So I think that it's very likely that with the current contract that it allows for corruption. It allows for protection of misconduct, and that must end.
Another problem is guns being stolen and infiltrating the city of Chicago through freight trains. Numerous reports, including there was a local alderman, knew about the problem in the back of the yards neighborhood and yet failed to do anything about it. After numerous reports from local news outlets, investigation, including here on IntellectualRadio.com/iHeart radio station, has sounded the alarm where these guns are being taken, and specifically, nothing has been done to hold Union Pacific, Canadian Pacific, BNSF, Norfolk Southern, TSX, and Canadian National accountable for on a local and state level to curb the problem of people stealing guns off freight trains.
Well, I have had legislation, resolutions, and I've worked with those companies trying to make sure that they increase the security around those facilities, making sure they lock the freight train cars so that they cannot be easily interrupted, making sure that these guns that are not bought have certain safety locks on it so that they can't be tampered with or used if they are stolen. So you can look at my legislative record and see that for years I have been trying to fight with these rail companies to deal with this issue.
How can you come to a common ground to make it like you have been fighting, but it sounds like you're fighting by yourself? What is the mechanism here that people need to rally around you to get things solved, to get Union Pacific, the Canadians and Canadian Pacific, Norfolk off there, you know what, and get things done?
See, that's all these issues that we need a mayor with a vision and a political will to say, this is not going to happen in my city anymore. We know that this has been going on, and we have to have a mayor that's focused on the 77 communities, because the way I see it, you got to have a mayor with what you call not only political will, but the courage and the morals of have a moral government that's going to take care of these communities. You know, as a realtor, this is the way I see a community. If you have vacant and abandoned properties in a community, let's say Austin, the values of all of the properties go down. If you have crime in Austin, vacant and abandoned buildings in Austin, people addicted to substance use, you have people homeless, all of this is happening in Austin and in other communities of the 77. The values of those properties go down. And because it's happening in Chicago, the entire city's values go down and people start leaving Chicago. We have to build up our population. We have to make sure that all the communities are invested in, and that every community brings up the value of the city as a whole, and we all will do better.
Let's turn to education. Hundreds of school closings under the current mayor led to students going to school in gang territory, as well as traveling far, leaving an hour or more commuting time from home, putting them in potential dangerous situation, which led to the Chicago public schools to request more safety zones route in school zone areas. As mayor, how would you prevent the closing of schools as well as guarantee student safety?
Well, closing schools is the threat to the value of a community. So one, when you close a school, that's the moral value that you have for the community where the schools are closed. One, you cannot allow for the community schools to deteriorate, lose enrollment, and then blame the community for not having the number of students in the area. So in order to grow communities, in order to grow schools, you have to grow communities. So our goal is to make sure that we invest in communities so that people want to move in and our schools are filled. We have a whole United States of America that we could draw populations from to say that I want to move back to Chicago. Chicago is the place to be. They have the number one education, and they have 77 communities where I could choose, because every community in that city will have high quality education. So education is the root of communities. So that's what we have to do. We have to make sure that we make our communities healthy, financially stable, and safe. And then our population grows. Our schools will then have larger numbers of people trying to enroll in them.
You wanted to build a state-of-the-art school in the Austin community. You looked at Brock's site as a potential location, and nothing has happened. Many West Side residents think the West Side is being ignored when it comes to building new schools from the ground up, as well as educational resources that has been neglected as well. What are your plans as mayor to build a state-of-the-art schools or high schools in Austin?
Well, every community must have a state-of-the-art school. But in Austin, we had a referendum on the ballot stating that Austin, one of the largest communities in the school, a referendum that passed overwhelmingly. It was non-binding, but the people in 29th Ward said that they want a new state-of-the-art high school, and they want the state and the city to work together to build one. So we're going to make sure that the city stops sending the message that our best schools are Lane, Whitney Young, Peyton, Northside Prep. So if you have a city that's telling their residents, these are the best schools, we know your other schools are no good, but those are your choices because these are select enrollment schools. That's horrible. That can no longer happen. Our priority in Chicago must be to make our communities grow and make our schools grow and have high quality education in every community. It must happen.
People overwhelmingly voted for an elected school board. Unfortunately, the people have spoken, but it did not convince the current mayor as well as the state officials to implement it into law. Why state officials did not introduce an elected school board into the floor of the state house or the Senate?
Well, for one, I was one of the first to pass legislation to do a task force for the elected school board. And that passed, and CPS failed to implement it. They were supposed to implement it. They didn't do it. Next, we filed a bill and passed the bill in the House for an elected school board. And my record shows in 2017, I voted for it. I think I voted for it twice. The bill is stalled in the Senate. So we passed the bill in the House. So we're waiting for the Senate to pass it. And I voted for it, and I was a sponsor.
Now, currently, why people are not notified about what's going on, about where it stands, because a lot of people said we voted for it. We don't know what's going on. It's just falling on deaf ears.
Well, I think that as elected officials, we have to do better, and everyone has to do better at making sure that if there's an issue that they're concerned about, that they're very, very vigilant, because that did make the Tribune, the Sun Times, and community papers, and it's been out there.
The conditions of Chicago public schools has been piss poor as far as cleanliness, rat droppings, rodents running around classrooms. The problem was so bad, there was one particular school was forced to close its doors for a couple of days. What are your plans as mayor to make sure that low income students has the same clean schools as upper class school districts?
You know, all our schools in Chicago will be clean. All our schools in Chicago will.
We can't hear you. Can you say that one more time, sir?
All our schools in Chicago will be clean. All our schools in Chicago will be safe. We have to make sure that people that we contract with respect our community, respect the school, and only want high quality services presented to those schools. That's what we're going to do. We're going to make sure that the contracts that we have with these companies, one, we hope that we could find companies from within the community to bring jobs into that community to do the cleaning for those schools. Every community should have someone, hopefully, from that community that could possibly have a contract to keep that school clean. And those parents may have kids in that school. And so when we do that, that's going to benefit everyone.
Special education has been ignored for some time. You're an educator now in Chicago public schools and in the state level. There are an increasing number of students who are being diagnosed with some type of learning disability. Therefore, why in the state level that the students with a learning disability is not properly funded so the city can provide more resources to those students who may need it? As mayor, can you convince the state to fund special education?
Well, I think that the city has its responsibility. The city has the budget. The city takes care of their funding for the for their school. They have $1 billion budget. It's the priorities of the administration and that school board that makes the decision. So, of course, the state is already now a part of monitoring the CPS, and I've been working with ISB, the State Board of Education, to deal with the lawsuit that's been filed on special education and CPS. So yes, as a mayor, not only will we make sure that the special ed students are taken care of, but we will make sure that only students that are special ed are diagnosed special ed, and not diagnosed special ed because the school failed to teach them basic skills and they failed to learn how to read and write when they were in the grades where they should have learned. So some students fall off as special ed simply because the CPS school failed them and didn't teach them. So now they are diagnosed as special ed when the fact is they were never given the basic skills they needed to be a high quality learner. So we have to make sure that all our kids receive the basic skills and that their needs are met, and make sure that we move kids from special ed to regular ed if possible. Kids shouldn't have to be special ed students for a lifetime. Hopefully our special ed programs will move them from special ed to general education, and hopefully high quality IB programs. Hopefully the special ed students will grow and move to regular ed classes as well.
The city water has been tested by the CDC and other testing outlets that show Chicago water system is on the brink of Flint, Michigan lead levels in low-income communities in the city, mainly in the Black community. As mayor, what are your plans to tackle the rising lead levels in the inner city schools, park district, as well as homes and apartments?
Well, I mean, it's simple. You eliminate it, and you go for the federal resources, and you go for state support. You go for all the resources. You work with the unions, and you make sure that you get partners that care about Chicago, and you eliminate the contamination in our schools and in our city. Period. I mean, it's as simple as having political will and a desire to make sure that we take care of the families in Chicago. It's not that difficult. We just have to have the political will and desire to do so.
Many Blacks believe they have been shafted because of the Black Caucus willing and dealing with city contracts. You mentioned this earlier. Currently in the city council, you have a majority Black voting bloc, a Black caucus inside of City Hall, and still Blacks are well below city contracts. As mayor, how would you make sure Blacks receive their fair share of city contracts? Because now Hispanics has the majority of the contracts of city jobs.
Well, one, you have to make sure that you have an administration that has political will to want it. Two, you have to make sure that you help build capacity. Three, you have to make sure that you let your guiding principles be fairness. And that's what we need in Chicago. We need someone that has a fair mind that wants to bring everyone in and not leave people out. I mean, it's clear that we need a mayor that understands the city's problems, that understands that people have been left out. So it's all about electing a mayor that understands what the city needs, and a mayor that really is interested in having a real 77 communities agenda.
The city of Chicago has been rated one of the worst cities that are rat infested. Alderman Ed Burke a couple of years ago wanted more coyotes in the city to control the infestation of rodents, raccoons, possums, and rats. Now you have a rodent and a coyote problem in the city. In the new budget, there is currently $23 million set aside for rodent abatement, as well as an increased rodent control to 5 crews. As mayor of Chicago, what is your plan to curb the rodent infestation? And do you think the budget that is allocated is good enough to curb the problem?
Yeah, so I have not had a chance to look at that rodent problem and the budget, and I would have to ask if we could wrap up because I have
Okay, no problem. Well,
I could take a final close question.
Oh, well, actually, the final closing question would be, it was kind of like a couple of more, but Please give IntellectualRadio.com/iHeartRadio station listeners where they can contact you for more information, content to get a hold if they want to volunteer for your campaign.
Thank you, Roman. And Chicago, Ford for Chicago could be contacted at 1chicago@fordforchicago.com. 1chicago@fordforchicago.com.
Okay, well, thank you so much. Next time we want you in the studio, okay?
Yes, sir. We will talk about that, and I really appreciate you giving me your airtime.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. That's going to do it for us on the Drive at 5 on IntellectualRadio.com/iHeartRadio station. Thanks to Earl Winfrey, our executive producer, Wanda, who is behind the scenes. You guys have a great week, everyone.